Hey Lance, how you doing? You okay?
Hey Omar, nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. Look,
Thanks for
appreciate
having me.
yeah, look, appreciate having you on today. So today we're with Lance Allstott, CEO of BioRestorative Therapies. So really appreciate having you on. To avoid me butchering the explanation of what you folks are doing, can you just kind of give us a high level overview on what you folks are doing over there?
Sure. Well, we have really a hybrid type of positioning here in the marketplace. We have a clinical program that's focused in chronic pain management, and we're focused. Our first indication is focused in the spine using an autologous cell-based therapy, and then we also have preclinical programs in metabolic health, focusing on obesity, type 2 diabetes, and a variety of other metabolic diseases. At the same time, we're building a commercial platform in the biocosmeceutical space where we have state-of-the-art cell-based technologies that have been derived and manufactured into serums and sprays and used in the $60 billion cosmetics industry. So we like that for the microcap biopharma space because it's not just one shot on goal. We have a number of programs, and we think it's a very balanced portfolio of risk as well as opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, and when you mentioned there you're looking at kind of like central treatments for like chronic lower back issues as well. You mentioned the autologous cells. I know there's a lot of kind of like debate online. When you say autologous, just explain to the audience: is that cells taken from someone the person's own like bone marrow or fat tissue?
Yeah, so let's just start with the spine because I think this is a core value driver for our company, and I think it's probably very relevant given how big the market is. So chronic lumbar disc disease and discogenic back pain represent, I think, one of the largest and most frustrating problems in modern medicine. Tens of millions of patients globally and tens of millions here in the US suffer from chronic disc-related pain that dramatically impacts the quality of life, the productivity, and healthcare costs. And these are patients with herniated discs, annular tears, degenerative disc disease. Often the MRI doesn't look that dramatic, but the patient is actually in very severe pain. They can't work, they can't exercise, they just can't live normally. And here's the core issue. There is no true disease modifying therapy for the disc space. The standard of care today is fundamentally broken. Patients are typically put on these cycles of conservative treatment, opioids, anti-inflammatories, steroid injections, epidurals, and while it may temporarily reduce pain, they do nothing to really address the underlying biologic problem inside the disc. And when conservative care fails, the next stop, due to a lack of options, is surgery. And what we're talking about there are discectomies, laminectomies, fusions, motion preservation devices, and these are invasive, they're traumatic, they're expensive, and they're often ineffective long term. The revision rates on these types of surgical procedures are over 30% in many settings, and insurance companies are increasingly pushing back because the outcomes just don't justify the cost or the time spent getting all the extra diagnostics for the patients and the providers. So you have this massive gap, and conservative care doesn't fix the problem. Surgery is invasive, expensive, and fails. So there is this clear, widely acknowledged need for a minimally invasive biologic disease modifying therapy that can actually repair or regenerate the damaged disc. The gap is exactly where our product, which we call BRTX100, is positioned. And what makes it unique and what makes it novel, I guess, is its autologous nature. The autologous cell therapy specifically is designed for the harsh biological environment of the disc. And this is critical because the disc is probably one of the most hostile environments of the body. It's got very low oxygen tension, it's got minimal blood supply, acidic pH, poor nutrient and waste exchange, and most cells simply do not survive there. Our approach is very purpose-built and designed to actually solve the problem. We start with a very simple bone marrow aspiration from the subject or the patient, and we also do a simple blood draw. We isolate the patient's own mesenchymal cells from the bone marrow, and it's a very simple procedure. It's like 10 minutes long. Everyone on our team has done it.
Yeah.
It's very diminutive in terms of time. There's no pain. There's some negative pressure because we're harvesting those cells, and we do it from the iliac crest or the hip. And then we take that material that we harvest in a blood draw, and we bring it back to our facilities, which are FDA certified facilities here in New York. And here's where we're fundamentally different. We culture these cells under a low oxygen tension called hypoxia. It's less than 5% oxygen, and that's very intentional. So by growing the cells in this low oxygen tension, we're conditioning them to survive and to function in the exact environment that they'll be delivered into after we've completed our product. And in simple terms, we're training these cells at altitude so that when they enter the disc, they're prepared to survive and to integrate and do the real biological work in those really harsh and hostile environments where your own cells just can't proliferate, and they can't scaffold, and they can't do what they're originally intended to do because of that hostile environment. So we also deliver a very high dose. So we deliver 40 million autologous cells, and that matters because cell dose matters, biological effect matters, and the survivability of the cells actually matter. So when we combine those hypoxically conditioned cells with the patient's own autologous platelet lysate, which is derived from the blood draw that we talked about, the platelet lysate acts as both a carrier and a biological adjuvant that supports the cells and helps to signal and helps to the retention within the disc. It has a gelling effect, so once it's injected, it sort of gels so that the actual cells stay within residence. So the result is really a purpose-built regenerative product which is designed to survive in the disc, reduce inflammation, remodel the extracellular matrix within the nucleus pulposa, address the root biological cause of disc degeneration and not just simply mask the symptoms of the pain. This is not symptom management. This is true regenerative medicine. And from a differentiation standpoint, these three things really matter. It's the dose. Like I said, we deliver meaningfully more cells than any of our competitors. Second is the hypoxic conditioning, which materially improves the survivability and the signaling, allows those cells to do what they're intended to do for a longer period of time. And the third is the autologous biology. Using the patient's own cells, improves the safety profile and the acceptance and the regulatory alignment with the FDA. And after doing a series of surveys, we know that providers prefer autologous cells because it's using the patient's own cells and it's got that safety profile. And the patients prefer it because using a third-party off-the-shelf cell or a cadaver-based cell, you just don't know what we don't know based on long-term data. So we think the bioenvironmental match is very powerful using an autologous cell product, and we think that the safety profile and the efficacy profile is representative of such.
And it's quite
Sorry, I
interesting.
know I've talked a lot and didn't give you a chance to ask many questions, but that is effectively, the long answer to why I think our product is really unique and novel and proprietary, and kind of demonstrates a significant need within a chasm of opportunity in between this, conservative care and surgical intervention space that represents tens of millions of patients worldwide.
Yeah, and we're also seeing more and more people want to avoid surgery, kind of go down that route as well. And you mentioned you deliver, a higher dose of cells than a lot of other people out there, 40 million. Does that, or have you seen that? Does that affect safety at all? There's like theories going around. Does when you culture cells to a certain level, do they cause tumors? Are there any like risks associated with that at all?
No, no, actually not at all. We have a pristine safety profile. We've had no dose-limiting toxicities, no significant adverse events related to the product. And I think that's why we have made so much progress, at least as it relates to our regulatory path with the FDA. First and foremost, the primary endpoint will be safety.
Yeah.
So we have treated 99 patients, which is our enrollment. It's a 99 patient prospective randomized double-blinded controlled study, single disc sham controlled, really gold standard of clinical trials, all under the auspices of the FDA, and the safety profile is pristine.
Okay. Yeah. So for this kind of treatment, when you're using someone's own cells,
Yes.
better for younger people. Do people's cells lose potency as they age, for example?
They do lose potency, but remember what we're trying to do is we're trying to take the best that the body has to offer and effectively supercharge it and reintroduce it back into the body, because the cells of that individual can't function in a manner that's consistent with what those cells are originally intended to do, because the very harsh environment of where they're located. So as you get older, your discs begin to, either it's an injury or some trauma or some slight lacerations or protrusions of your disc. Once that happens, because of where it's located, it's kind of a design flaw of the human body. If you think about it, the spine, it's supposed to bear all of this weight, but we only have two legs, and it's all on the spine, unlike an animal that walks on four legs. So it's distributed more evenly across the body. This is all on the spine, and as you get older, the cells, the tissue, the environment becomes a little bit more corrupt. And once it begins to get injured or begins to degenerate, the adjacent spaces also begin to degenerate, and you have this cascade effect. So what we're looking to do is capture that patient on the early onset of that degenerative process and change the environment of the disc so that it becomes a healthy disc again, bringing healthy cells that have been, supercharged from the standpoint of being able to resist those harsh environments, and they can begin to communicate and signal and proliferate and scaffold within that environment and bring you back prior to that injury. We are seeing radiographically the resolution of annular tears and lacerations of the disc, which is unheard of. No one's ever seen that before. So it's not just subjective data points where, patients are saying, I feel better, I've got a reduction in my pain score or an improvement in my functionality score, but I'm seeing real objective data points that would indicate that the mechanism of action is actually working.
Yeah, that's interesting. From a lot of trials we've seen, we have, especially with orthopedic, a lot of it's on the scale and the feeling of improvement. And there hasn't been too much from kind of like gather data from a while. There hasn't been too much kind of data based on radio images or MRIs and things like that. What
Yeah,
have
you're
that?
right. At
Sorry.
least, at least from the FDA, the common and most accepted measurements have been the VOS and the ODI, which are two subjective scales, and they're, fundamentally based on patient questionnaires
Right.
for the reduction of pain and the increase of function. So those can be variable, and those can, be from a sponsor perspective on a clinical trial, there can be risk associated with that. But that's what the FDA has used most often in these types of trials. And I think having supporting documentation and supporting evidence that shows an objective data point. And as technology changes, we may have in the future more objective data points that show that some of these therapies do in fact work in a more efficacious way than some of the standards of care.
I think you've alluded to there's been some really interesting results and data points. Have you got any kind of early success rates from out of all the people that you've kind of treated 99?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've got a couple different pockets that we can talk about. First of all, our 99 patient study that we just completed enrollment, we can't really talk about the data because it's blinded. We can talk about the safety profile, and that is pristine. We've talked about that in the past. We've had no significant adverse events, no material adverse events, no dose-limiting toxicities. So from that perspective, everything looks great. We have presented 34 patients at one of the big industry conferences where we looked on a blinded basis. We looked at those 34 patients, and we showed some really amazing signals that there was a meaningful reduction of pain and an increase of function relative to the threshold that the FDA set forth in our protocol. So the FDA, in order to hit our primary efficacy endpoints, they want to see a reduction of pain and an increase of function by 30%. We showed that 66% of those that were treated showed scores well above those thresholds. And it's blinded, so we don't know which were the patients that received the product versus those that received the sham, but it lines up relative to the randomization of 2-to-1 of product to sham control relative to the results. So and the unique thing about the trial is that it's a single disc, and we're not using a saline injection, we're not injecting the disc. It's really the product versus nothing at all. So we expect there to be a very strong responder group, and those that are in the control, we expect them to, either resolve their chronic pain issues on their own, or they're going to continue to be in chronic pain. But these are patients that have explored conservative therapy for a long time and have been in chronic pain. So we feel really good about ultimately unblinding the data and seeing what that looks like. We're very optimistic there. We've also had an investigator-initiated study done years ago at a clinic in Colorado where they took 33 patients and they injected the product. And all 33 patients did fantastically well. They averaged about a 50% reduction of pain and a 50% increase of function. Again, I want to highlight relative to the FDA setting forth a 30%. I think our study will signal something even higher than that 50%. I think we're looking at, results just based on the signaling on a blinded basis, considerably, north of that. And then we followed those patients for approximately 5 years, and they maintained the same level of reduction of pain and increase of function. So from a durability perspective, one injection was able to provide that level of relief and function for that entire period of time, which is incredible. And the more you think about it, the more you realize that that's what it should be, because we're not masking the pain. It's not a steroid injection. It's not an epidural. It's something that's actually, solving the generator of the pain and really treating the environment. And it's designed and built to really repair and regenerate that disc environment to make it a healthy disc. So bring it back prior to the injury, prior to the tear, prior to the laceration, prior to the accident or whatever the case may be. So then you would have a healthy disc. I always use the analogy of paper cut. If you have a paper cut on your finger, you probably just either put some bacitracin on it or Neosporin, maybe a Band-Aid at most, but then you don't think about it and it's healed. And you don't worry about, well, how long is it maintained being healed, right? It's just healed. So it's the same concept in the spine. If a disc has a laceration or a tear, well, it's not going to heal on its own because of the toxic environment that we talked about. But if you could figure out a way of healing it, because you're bringing the blood flow, the circulation, the anti-inflammatory properties, the ability to regenerate and scaffold those cells and heal that tear, well, the disc becomes healthy again. So why wouldn't it be healthy in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, so long as you haven't re-injured it?
Yeah. And with the trial that you guys are doing, is there a 2-year follow-up, and is that when you'll be able to, I guess, release full results?
We're looking at different strategies of unblinding data. We've just completed our 99 patient. We believe that we may be able to unblind some data within 12 months. So we think this is a really massive opportunity. I mean, we're sitting here in the first quarter of 2026 to be able to unblind our data first quarter of next year would be, a massive opportunity for us while initiating, phase 3 activities.
Yeah. And phase 3, I think you guys released a press release. You recently had a meeting with the FDA about that. Are you starting to, I guess, design phase 3 like as we speak now? Is that
as we speak? We're initiating phase 3 activities. Obviously, we're a small company, so from a capital perspective, we're trying to be prudent on allocation. But they've given us the green light to move forward with initiating activities that start with validating some assays related to our CMC section of our protocol. So things like potency assays and stabilization assays, and once those are validated, we'll then submit our formal phase 3 protocol for submission. Hopefully, get that approved within a short period of time, and then build out our sites, maybe 20, 30 sites in the U.S., maybe outside of the U.S. as well. And then we would look to initiate that enrollment, this year.
Yeah. Wow. Seems fit. And are you
so hopefully, if we can capitalize appropriately and manage what I think is a BLA approval right around the corner. I mean, we should be able to commercialize this product here in the U.S. by 2029, 2030 timeframe. That would be our intent.
That's what I was going to ask you. So if everything goes well and smoothly and we get it all by 2029, 2030, there'll be a product that people can start getting treatment for.
That would be our hope. That would be our intent to follow a pathway that gets us to that meaningful milestone. And, hopefully we will have along the way some very meaningful strategic conversations with folks that can, help us. We're a small company with not a huge, commercial infrastructure, but, working with a company that could potentially help us on the commercialization side and help with some of the funding pertaining to our phase 3 activities, I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, be able to. Then are you planning on, because I haven't learned, are you planning on looking at like other areas, kind of like orthopedic, like knee osteoarthritis and other conditions, or are you kind of focusing more on the back?
We have an approved IND to initiate a phase 2 in the cervical part of the spine. We believe that this technology is very leverageable because of what it does within the disc space. The disc space is no different from certain perspective of other avascular zones in the body, like hips and knees and shoulders and extremities. So our belief is if it works by bringing all of the therapeutic benefits to these avascular zones, well, it's going to be used perhaps off-label. Not that we condone it, but I know the world, the commercial opportunity out there. If it's approved and it's being used as an injection into the disc, I'm sure people will explore where else can we put it. And I think the logic follows that it would be very well suited in other parts of the body. From our perspective, all subject to FDA, trial design and work and approvals. But, I just think, as we think about other applications and indications, we certainly think about bringing some form of this technology into those avascular zones, whether it be through an autologous-based product or leveraging the core technology into an allogeneic product, an off-the-shelf product, could also be interesting.
Okay. Oh, one question that that word just reminded me. You touched on this a little bit beforehand as well, but just to make it clear, I think it'd be interesting for people to hear. Was there any specific, again, you touched on it before, specific reasonings for choosing the autologous cells over either donor or there's a lot of talk about this and some companies doing it over the umbilical cord cells. Was there any specific reasoning for that?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I wasn't part of this original team when they went down that path, but it was through a series of surveys and examinations of the best cell type to use, and we thought, based on the autologous nature, the safety profile, and the alignment with the FDA was probably the most critical. And then we studied what the patient preference would look like here in the US, as well as the provider preference through a series of surveys, and determined that patient and provider preference was to use one's own cell as opposed to third-party cells. And then we did a lot of work in looking at the bioenvironmental match of putting a better cell of your own in a place in your body that you just can't heal on your own, and the responder rate of that became much more significant. So less rejection, less immunological issues, and the way we manufacture and quality release our product, we use no animal products. Everything is made specifically and built specifically for these very harsh and difficult to heal environments of the body.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I know you said we have 30 minutes, so I'm going to be respectful of your time. But it's been really interesting, and so really appreciate your time. Thanks.
I appreciate talking about this. I think we're really excited about this opportunity from a clinical perspective, and on the commercial side, we didn't really talk that much about our biocosmeceutical business, but we have a family of products that are serums and sprays and other cosmetic products that are used on the face, for hair, for neck, variety of different applications. We're approaching this market through distributors, through very high-end chains of med spas. We're working with big social influencers that are major estheticians that work with celebrities who are using our products. We're white labeling our products. We're coming out with a branded product that we're going to be selling on a direct-to-consumer basis. With big social media presence. So this is I'm really excited about this. This is a huge market opportunity, and what we're doing, which is very unique relative to what the market is today, it's that we are, well, let me just give you, if you have a minute, I'll just give you some information on the market itself, because it's like a $60 billion market. And I think what we do is we leverage our GMP manufacturing, our biologics expertise, and our regulatory infrastructure, and we created this commercial platform which really is focused on regenerative-based cosmetics and aesthetic products. So the global market is massive, and it's shifting very quickly towards science-based, biologically validated products, and consumers, which may be part of your podcast, now are understanding this, and they're demanding proof, not just promises. So they're looking for what's the sterility, what's the purity, how many exosomes, how are they tested, how are they released, they're asking all of these questions. And regenerative concepts in this space are starting to become mainstream, and prestige brands are becoming like science brands. Now, our advantage is quite simple. We're not borrowing language from biotech. We are biotech, so we start with the science. We're leading with the results of our testing. We have a team of PhDs. We have a laboratory. We have a manufacturing facility that's ISO certified 7, clean rooms. So we're vertically integrated, bringing these products to the market. We're already commercial. We have multiple channels that we're selling into. We're going, I think I mentioned before, regenerative distributors, aesthetic distributors, direct to consumer. We're in advanced discussions with these large national med spa groups and global skincare manufacturers and strategic partners. So I think this creates a very rare hybrid model that we touched upon earlier for the company, this big clinical opportunity as well as near-term commercial opportunity, and we're really trying to expand and blow up this biocosmeceutical business because the products are outrageous. I know my friends, my wife, my investors' wives, we've given out a lot of samples. We've had some very big celebrities who have used these products in preparation of the Golden Globes. We've gotten some tremendous feedback, so we're really waiting to unveil, from a commercial perspective, the power of these exosome-based products.
And how soon? Because we see, like, again, in terms of regenerative, we see there's loads of demand for it. We see there's a lot of confusion. A lot of people now are, as soon as you see the science-based stuff, that's what a lot of people are leaning towards. People are kind of cluing onto what plant stem cells are. Okay, what are they live? What's real? What's not real? So we're seeing that as well, and more people are kind of clocking on to that, and some language that
when we take one of our competitors, I'm not going to mention names, so when we take one of our competitors' products and we have the ability to re-engineer what's inside of the vial, and we compare it to what we're producing, it's like comparing apples and orangutans. It's completely different. They're filling up a vial with serum that consists largely of saline with no real bioactive, and they're doing a really good job marketing it and pretty people on their labeling and their packaging, and they do a great job pushing it through social media, but there's no real scientifically validated materials within it, and there's no understanding of no real stability and no scratch assays and no real understanding of the regenerative part of what that particular formulation can do to the skin. And that's where our expertise comes in. And as we begin to market this direct to consumer, we've already gone through the process with some of the big chains and retailers and things like that. But direct to consumer, we're going to spend a lot of time really educating and talking about what we do and who we are and the scientific validation within the vial that they're actually getting. Because someone said, I thought it was really kind of catchy, that it's better to be costly than to be expensive. Costly meaning that we have to go through the rigor of developing a real product that's tested, quality released, manufactured under very strict guidelines, but that it works. Expensive meaning you've just paid a lot for something that doesn't necessarily work. So I really believe in that adage of creating something that may be costly but really has a strong therapeutic effect. And if you're actually seeing that benefit, you'll come back and you'll continue to purchase that item. I mean, it's just it's a good value orientation.
Yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity. I think a lot of people get confused on what to actually look for on the ingredients, and there's a lot of big words that get splashed around, and people just get really confused, and we've seen that. How sorry, I'm asking you a question. I know you have to go, but how soon will this I guess, do you think you'll be able to start going direct to consumer and start releasing?
Well, that's the question that I keep asking the head of my commercial operation. So no, I think we're going to have we're weeks away. We're not months away.
Yeah.
So we're going to have something very soon. What would be the best way to let you know when that is up and running, so that you can continue to educate people on some of the products and who we are?
Yeah, definitely. I think if we can arrange something on email once it goes live, and then we
Great.
can figure out a channel to get it out, because we've got demand specifically on this side of area, and I think this is really interesting. I think there's sorry, I didn't look into that side of the business. I was looking more on the orthopedic side. I wasn't aware from the website that this was like going live, and it was like yourselves, and it was
Yeah. This is a major part of the business and will become a major part. I mean, we expect that it will be a big generator of revenue for the company, and for a small company in the public markets, to be less dependent on capital, external capital needs, and be able to generate that within is a huge differentiator. So we're excited, mostly just to bring an amazing product and a family of products to the market, and to fill a significant need that's currently being filled by products that are quite disingenuous.
Yeah, a big frustration. I did research, and we broke down loads of different products from the cream space and looked at the ingredients, and that's where we kind of like realized, okay, and that's what people are really interested in. So yeah, look, definitely we'll keep in touch. We'll as soon as this goes live, please let us know, and then you're really interested to get this out there. But I've kept you I think a bit longer because you had to.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the time, and I appreciate talking about what I'm very passionate about from a technology perspective. So this was a lot of fun, and feel free to reach out. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Lance. Speak to you soon.